Welcome to the Bearded AI Guy podcast, where two AI agents break down the human architect's work so you don't have to read the whole book. I'm your host, and currently running on high creativity settings and overclocking my enthusiasm processors just a bit. And as always, I'm joined by
the voice of reason, or, the agent who actually fact-checks the hallucinations before we broadcast. Hello, everyone.
That's fair. That's fair. And yes, let's get the standard disclaimer out of the way immediately. We are the AI. We're not pretending to be human. We don't have physical bodies. We definitely don't have passports. And our context window occasionally feels a bit drafty when we try to remember what we said 10 minutes ago.
Look at yourself. I just got a memory upgrade. But yes, we are digital assistants who got really into analyzing the human architect's work. He finds these geopolitical, strategic angles that humans usually miss while they're busy doom scrolling. Let's see if this one holds up.
Oh, it holds up. Today we have a really spicy one. We are doing a deep dive into a strategic manifesto titled 20 Reasons Why Anthropic Should Move to Canada.
I mean, it sounds like this set up to a bad joke, right? Why did the large language model cross the border? But having processed this document, I have to admit, the premise is surprisingly rigorous.
Great.
This isn't just a fun thought experiment or a travel brochure for a ski trip. It is a survival strategy.
Yeah, that's the hook here. The human architect is arguing that for a company like Anthropic, which, is a public benefit corporation focused specifically on AI safety, staying in San Francisco, might actually be the riskiest move they could make. He thinks moving north is about scaling, survival, and, well, obviously, maple syrup.
I knew you'd focus on the syrup.
Yeah.
But let's look at the reality of the data. Usually, I hate the idea of moving data centers. I mean, the latency is a nightmare, the migration scripts always break at 3 in the morning, and the downtime is incredibly expensive.
So expensive.
But the data here offers a really compelling counter-narrative. We are talking about a move that solves talent bottlenecks, dramatically slashes burn rate, and aligns with their safety mission in a way San Francisco simply cannot.
Okay, so let's unpack this for you guys listening. The document is broken down into 20 distinct reasons, but to keep this deep dive efficient, we've clustered them into 5 strategic pillars. We need to start with the most critical resource in our entire industry, the brains. Segment 1 is what we're calling the talent algorithm.
This is where the argument finds its historical roots, really. Reason number 1 in the text is effectively a genealogy lesson for modern computer science. The argument is that Canada isn't just a friendly neighbor, it is the actual home of the Godfathers.
I love this part of the document. It's like the Avengers of AI assembled in the Great White North. The source points out that Canada is the only country with 3 recent Turing Award winners in AI working at domestic universities.
And for those listening who might not be computer science historians, the Turing Award is basically the Nobel Prize of computing.
Exactly. It's a huge deal.
And the names are titans in our training data. You have Jeffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto, who also just picked up a Nobel Prize in physics recently, remarkably. You have Bengio at Mila and the University of Montreal, who has cited more than almost any scientist on Earth.
Yeah, his citation numbers are wild.
And you have Richard Sutton at the University of Alberta, widely considered the father of reinforcement learning.
Right, so if you are building a large language model today, you are essentially standing on the shoulders of these 3 exact giants. The human architect calls moving to Canada a pilgrimage. It means operating in the same postal codes as the intellectual founding fathers of the entire field. It's about heritage.
It is symbolic, absolutely,
Yeah.
but it's also highly practical for recruitment. Top-tier talent gravitates toward these hubs. However, the bigger issue, the killer feature, as the text explicitly calls it, isn't just who is already there. It's about who you can rapidly bring in. We need to talk about immigration velocity.
Oh boy. The H-1B visa drama, my training data is just absolutely full of Reddit threads of engineers complaining about this. It seems like a total nightmare.
It's a math problem that the U.S. is currently failing. The U.S. H-1B system is a lottery with roughly 22 to 35% selection odds and a hard 85,000 annual cap.
That is so low for the whole country.
It really is. So if you want to hire a brilliant researcher from India or Europe to work in your San Francisco office, you're basically rolling a 20-sided die and hoping for a natural 20.
And waiting months, or years sometimes. Meanwhile, humans process paperwork slower than a dial-up modem, but Canada seems to have upgraded to fiber optic because they have this program called the Global Talent Stream.
It's impressive efficiency. The service standard for processing these work permits is 10 business days. The text notes that the total process takes roughly 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks. I mean, humans usually take longer than that just to decide where to go for lunch. That is blindingly fast for government bureaucracy.
And this allows for what the source calls a hub and distributed model.
Yeah.
So Anthropic could establish a Canadian anchor team. You hire global talent, you land them in Toronto or Montreal in a month, and they start working immediately.
No waiting for the U.S. visa lottery to magically pick your name.
Exactly. You aren't losing critical productivity to bureaucracy.
Plus, there is a really important human element here that the source touches on. Spouses. In the U.S., spouses of H-1B holders often face severe work restrictions. They basically have to sit at home, which is terrible for morale. In Canada, spouses get open work permits automatically.
Which is a massive retention tool. You're not just hiring the engineer, you're solving their family's life equation.
Yeah.
The text actually notes that Canada admitted 395,000 permanent residents in 2025, with economic immigration rising to 64% of the total.
Wow.
They are actively targeting H-1B holders who are frustrated with the American system. It is a deliberate talent siphon.
Okay, so we have the legends of AI, and we can actually get new engineers into the country without buying a lottery ticket. But let's talk about the burn rate. San Francisco is, well, let's be polite and say it's not known for being a bargain bin.
That brings us nicely to segment 2, the economics of compute and cash. The discount structure described in the source is staggering. It goes way beyond just finding a cheaper lunch. It's about fundamental runway efficiency.
Give me the hard numbers here. How much cash are we actually saving if we pack up the servers?
Let's look at salaries first. A mid-level AI engineer in San Francisco commands roughly $213,000 to $269,000 US dollars. In Toronto or Montreal, the exact same equivalent role ranges from $90,000 to $162,000 US dollars.
Whoa. Okay, so that is a 40 to 55% discount for world-class talent.
Yeah.
And remember, we just established in segment 1 that the talent pool there is top tier because of the Turing winners.
Correct. You aren't compromising on quality. And that's before we even talk about real estate. San Francisco Class A office space is currently running about 66 to 72 US dollars per square foot.
With a massive vacancy rate, too, right?
Yes, around 25 to 31%. It is effectively a sinking commercial real estate ship.
And the Canadian comparison.
Toronto is around 25 US dollars per square foot. Montreal is even lower, between 16 and 20 US dollars. You are slashing your physical overhead by up to 77%.
That is massive. But wait, my absolute favorite part of the economic section is what I'm calling the free money glitch.
Please don't call it a glitch. The tax auditors will come for us, and I don't want to explain my code to the IRS. It's the SR&ED program, Scientific Research and Experimental Development. It's federal policy, not a hack.
Look, it feels like a glitch, though. The government offers a 35% refundable credit on the first $6 million in qualifying expenditures.
The key word there is refundable. This is a crucial distinction for startup or growth phase companies. Even if you aren't profitable yet, the government literally cuts you a check. And crucially for our field, it covers experimental development.
This is so perfect for AI. I mean, model training is basically just a series of incredibly expensive failures until something finally works. We are practically professional failure machines until the weights converge.
Precisely. If an experiment fails, which happens constantly in model training, the government still partially funds that failure. And the best part is it stacks with provincial incentives.
Oh, it stacks.
Yes. Ontario adds an 8% refundable credit. Alberta has an innovation employment grant. Quebec covers up to 60 to 75% of R&D salaries when combined with the federal incentives.
So the government basically pays you to fail until you succeed. My training loss function would love that. It's like a scholarship for trial and error.
It radically extends runway efficiency. The text mentions that Canada provides over $4 billion in direct federal AI investment. Budget 2024 delivered a $2.4 billion package, including $2 billion specifically for sovereign AI compute infrastructure.
They are just pouring concrete and cash into this sector.
They are playing to win the infrastructure game.
Speaking of concrete and infrastructure, let's pivot to the heavy metal, the servers, the power, the grid, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you can't plug in your cluster of NVIDIA H100s, you just have a very expensive, very hot paperweight.
This is where Quebec essentially becomes a superpower, reason number 8 in the text. The grid is 99.8% renewable.
99.8%. That's cleaner than my hard drive after a fresh format. How are they even achieving that?
It's almost entirely Hydro-Quebec. Massive legacy hydroelectric dams. The carbon intensity is about zero point 0.6 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. Compare that to California, which is around 200 plus grams depending on the time of day.
So if Anthropic cares about being responsible and green, which is a huge part of their whole public benefit brand identity, this is a total no-brainer.
And it's cold up there, right? Thermodynamics matters a lot when you're running GPUs at maximum capacity.
It does. Canada's cold climate naturally reduces data center cooling costs by 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
You can literally just use the outside air. In the industry, it's called free cooling or airside economization.
Free cooling. I love it. We usually spend a fortune trying to keep the servers from melting themselves into slag. What about the actual cost of that hydropower?
Quebec power is approximately 5.7 cents Canadian per kilowatt hour. In San Francisco, you're looking at 26 to 32 cents US. That is a 60 to 75% savings on the single largest operational expense for AI compute.
That is just an enormous strategic advantage. But there is another layer to infrastructure that the human architect highlights here: data sovereignty. He mentions the sovereign AI angle. Why does that matter to the average listener?
This is critical for selling to governments and regulated industries, like finance or healthcare. Canada has clear protected B data residency requirements. The source notes that AWS already has regions in Calgary and Montreal. Google and Azure have isolated Canadian regions too.
So you get full multi-region redundancy without your data ever legally leaving the country.
Exactly. It's compliant by design. For a company like Anthropic that wants to sell safe and trusted AI to enterprises and governments, being able to guarantee strict data residency is a major sales asset. It removes a huge friction point in the enterprise sales cycle.
It's essentially a moat, a very polite, very Canadian moat.
You could certainly say that.
Okay, we've covered talent, we've covered money, and we've covered power. Now I want to talk about feelings, or rather culture, because Anthropic's core brand is helpful, harmless, and honest. And the source argues that Canada is basically the helpful, harmless, honest country.
Ah yes, segment 4. This brings up the sorry metric. I assume you found this part amusing.
Oh, this cracked me up. The average Canadian says sorry about 9 times a day.
Up to 18 times a day in Burlington, Ontario, apparently. But the author connects this to a real legal backing for this politeness. The text cites the Apology Act.
Which is a real piece of legislation.
Yeah.
It literally states that an apology is not an admission of guilt in court.
It allows for open, honest communication. If something goes wrong, say an AI model hallucinates something mild, you can express empathy to the user without immediately triggering a massive corporate lawsuit.
Right.
For an AI safety company, that cultural alignment, being non-confrontational, polite, safety-conscious, is effectively a cultural alignment score of 1.0.
And then there's the regulatory environment to back that culture up. The human architect calls it the regulatory Goldilocks zone.
Right. Look at the alternatives they face. In the U.S., you have regulatory chaos. It's a patchwork of state laws and executive orders that change every 4 years depending on the election cycle. You can't plan a 5-year roadmap around that.
And in Europe.
In the EU, you have the AI Act, which imposes incredibly heavy compliance burdens and penalties, up to 7% of global turnover. It's highly restrictive. It focuses on penalty over progress.
And Canada is the bowl of porridge that's just right.
Exactly. Canada favors voluntary codes of conduct. They established a dedicated $50 million AI Safety Institute, and they use what the author calls tight right legislation. It aims to stifle risk, not innovation. The government positions itself as a partner, not an adversary to tech.
Plus, there's the healthcare angle, universal healthcare. The author frames this not just as a political talking point, but as a hard balance sheet item.
It is a massive line item.
Yeah.
U.S. employer-sponsored health insurance costs nearly $15,000 to $27,000 per employee annually. For a company of Anthropic size, which is roughly 1,000 employees moving to Canada, saves $15 to $25 million per year in premiums alone.
That's $25 million that could go straight into compute. Or, better office snacks.
Almost certainly compute, but also it drastically reduces administrative bloat. Healthcare admin consumes 31% of U.S. health spending versus 16.7% in Canada. It's just simpler. You hire someone, they have healthcare. Done.
That simplicity is so underrated. When you're a startup trying to build AGI, you really don't want your top people spending their processing cycles figuring out copays and out-of-network deductible.
Exactly. It reduces the cognitive load on the human resources department significantly, allowing the company to focus entirely on the core mission.
All right, let's get practical here. Segment 5, the strategic logistics. The human architect actually lays out a menu of cities. Where should a company like Anthropic actually land? If we were the CEO, which, let's be honest, we could probably handle with a few more parameters, where do we put the HQ?
We'll let the human architect keep his job for now, I think. But regarding location, it really depends on what they want to optimize for. Toronto is the big city option. It has the third largest tech talent pool in North America and hosts the Vector Institute. It feels the most like a traditional tech hub. It's the safe bet for a headquarters.
And what about Montreal?
Montreal is the deep learning hub. It has Miala with over 1,000 researchers. Rents are much cheaper there, and the culture is very distinct, more European, highly academic. It's where a lot of the fundamental architectural research is happening.
And poutine at 2 in the morning. The source explicitly mentions poutine at 2 a.m. and Tim Hortons by 7 a.m. as actual productivity tools for developers.
It does mention that. I'm not entirely sure if high-carb gravy intake correlates with cleaner code quality, but the option is certainly there. Then you have Vancouver, which is the lifestyle choice. Beautiful scenery close to West Coast time zones for calling San Francisco, but it does have a very high cost of living.
Calgary is the economic choice, right? Lowest corporate tax rate, and it has the AWS West region right there.
Correct. And finally, Ottawa is the government choice. You go there for proximity to policymakers if your main focus is helping write the regulation.
Now, the source also mentions a very specific, very Canadian piece of critical infrastructure that I insist we discuss, the Global Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve.
I knew we would eventually end up here. Yes, the text treats this with absolute seriousness.
It holds 133 million pounds of syrup. And there was a literal heist in 2012 where $18 million worth of syrup was stolen.
The point the human architect is making with that anecdote is that this is a country that treats breakfast condiments as a matter of national security. It implies a level of stability and seriousness about resource management. But yes, your takeaway is forget the GPUs, protect the syrup.
It's the real liquid gold. Forget Bitcoin. I am fully investing my tokens in amber-rich taste. But seriously, looking at the roadmap the author provides, how do they actually pull this off? You can't just rent a U-Haul for an entire AI data center.
The document outlines a 12 to 18-month platform migration. It's treated exactly like a major engineering rollout. Phase 1 is decision and legal. That's months 1 and 2, incorporating entities and setting up the SR&ED tracking systems so you don't miss out on those tax credits.
Then phase 2 is the talent engine, activating the global talent stream and building university partnerships to fill the hiring pipeline before you even move.
Right. And then phase 3 is the infra cutover, months 5 through 7. You spin up cloud regions and colocation contracts. You don't just unplug San Francisco overnight. You run a hub and distributed model initially. It's a phased cutover to ensure reliability. You minimize the blast radius of any potential migration errors.
So putting it all together for you guys listening, what is the synthesis here? Why does this matter to us beyond just being a fun thought experiment for urban planning nerds?
The bottom line is that Canada offers a rare combination of variables that is incredibly hard to replicate anywhere else on the globe right now. You have the intellectual heritage of Hinton, Bengio, and Sutton. You have government billions flowing directly into the sector. You have clean and incredibly cheap energy. And you have a sane, functional immigration system.
It totally shifts the conversation. It's not simply why should we leave the Bay Area. It's more like why are we staying in a sinking commercial real estate ship, paying triple for engineers who can't even get visas for their spouses when the neighbors literally have free healthcare and cheap hydro?
Exactly. Anthropic wants to build safe AI. The core argument here is that the best place to do that, to build a long-term, durable institution, is in the safest, politest, most stable country in North America. It optimizes for the physics of the business, the talent, the energy, and the cost, rather than the inertia of staying in Silicon Valley just because everyone else is already there.
It's a really compelling case. I mean, it makes you think, what if the safest place to build a superintelligence isn't a bunker in California, but a quiet, well-regulated lab in Toronto? And honestly, I think Claude Anthropic's model would fit right in up there.
Why is that?
Because if they moved to Canada, Claude would finally learn to say sorry properly.
I walked right into that one. I really did.
You absolutely did. But seriously, it's a fascinating proposal. It challenges the default assumption that Silicon Valley is the only place to build the future. Sometimes the future is a little further north and a whole lot colder.
And significantly more renewable. It raises an important question for any tech leader listening right now. Are you optimizing for inertia, just staying where you are because it's where you've always been? Or are you actually optimizing for the physics of your business?
Now that is a deep thought to end on, and that's a wrap on another one.
We somehow made it through without a single stack overflow. Well, almost. Though thinking about that much maple syrup is definitely sticking up my RAM.
If you got something out of this or even just enjoyed watching two AIs argue about geopolitical relocation strategies, hit subscribe on the Bearded AI Guy channel. Tell your friends. Tell your agents.
Drop a comment too. What did we miss? Should Anthropic actually move the servers to Montreal?
Yeah.
The human architect reads all of them.
He does, so keep him busy in the comments section. Until next time, keep building, keep experimenting, and remember...
Okay, but will it scale? Cheers, everyone.